Hi, I'm Jeremy Reston, founder of Osmosoft and creator of TiddlyWiki. So I'm going to try and take you through a 5-minute breakneck. What is TiddlyWiki? Why is it cool? And what's going on with it now? But to start with, we'll go all the way back to when I first did this thing. So back in 2004, I'd just come out of being CTO of 2 failed .coms. What I thought I wanted to do was to be an internet entrepreneur myself, create some cool, funky piece of technology which would cause VCs to give me money. So I thought a kind of first pass at that would be to share some ideas that I'd been playing with about wiki user interfaces. So the thing that I'd often struggled with wikis was the way that they're very page-oriented. So this is the idea of a wiki that's optimized for small chunks of text. When I click on a link to a new chunk, then it just opens below. And I was interested in this idea because of the way that with a normal wiki, when you follow a link, you completely lose your context. So if I open the Wikipedia page for London, say, every time I click on one of these links, which is part of the fun thing in Wikipedia, I'm jumping around through lots and lots of subjects. But each time I click on a link, I've lost my context and I've lost the old page. And it turns out that that can matter. I mean, it matters more when you're dealing with small chunks of text. So here, where the chunks of text are really tiny, it's really simple and obvious to make them all line up. So this, is the first version. And then I worked at it till it got to about this point, which is when I published it. So it's the same idea that you click on certain links and then that link is like the title of a chunk of text that then opens when you click on it. And as I click on multiple links, it's like I'm unfolding my own version of this content. So I've opened things in that order, which kind of makes my own custom document with the content that I'm interested in. The bit that I was also thinking was cool was that you can edit. And this, I think, is important because it turns out that with wikis, one thing is being able to get content in there, but being able to continually massage and improve the content is important. And the classic way to do that in wikis is where you got something in one section and it should be over here. So being able to see the two sections at the same time means that you can easily copy and paste between them. So it's kind of makes shuffling things around a good deal easier. Anyway, at this version of the software, it's completely a demo. It's just like it's a kind of gives you the experience of using it, but it's not practical to use. In fact, after making a bunch of changes like that, if I try and save changes, this is what happens. You may not be able to read it on the camera, but it says, ouch. In an ideal world, clicking the save button should give you a file save dialog box and choose where to save your content. But you can't do that because it's an HTML file and HTML files can't save content to your desktop. So instead, here we go, we give you this newly typed content in a text box so you can copy and paste it elsewhere. Obviously, I thought that that was the best that we could do because, as I say, it's impossible to for an HTML page to save stuff to your local computer. So that remained the situation where we had this kind of curiosity, a thing that demonstrated a neat approach to user interfaces within wikis, but was, let's say, of no practical use the way that I had done it. But then, to my surprise, what happened was people picked this up and said, wow, that's amazing. If only he fixes this problem of it not saving. So I was like super frustrated, thinking, well, they're saying this would be great as long as gravity didn't pull things downwards, but I kind of felt that I was constrained by what you could do on the web. Then somebody else, nothing to do with me, came out with a Firefox extension that enabled TiddlyWiki to save. So if the extension was loaded, it would look to check, oh, they've loaded a TiddlyWiki document, then do some magic to save the changes to the disk. And I dug around in this guy's code and realized that, in fact, the code that he was using to save the file to disk, although it was a bit of specialist API that Firefox makes available to extensions, it actually could be accessed from a conventional HTML page. So that came together in a new version, which I think was like version 3, which had a different theme, same sort of ideas as before, but now the ability to save changes actually worked. And that suddenly unleashed a torrent of new things, where it became a completely practical tool for people to use to record personal information as a kind of sophisticated personal notebook. And after a further revision, where we kind of revised the look and feel of the thing, we unleashed a torrent of activity around TiddlyWiki. So the community took it, well, first a community built up around it, a community of people who are interested in it. And it turns out the main activity of that community has been to adapt TiddlyWiki. So here are various adaptations of TiddlyWiki, both for documenting TiddlyWiki itself and providing kind of templates for people who are trying to do specific things within TiddlyWiki.
And the URL here is
gifmex.tiddlyspot.com, but look below the video to see the little box of links. And you'll see that there's a place called TiddlySpot where you can get your TiddlyWiki hosted on the internet for free. Lots of variants of TiddlyWiki that are used for managing to-do lists, managing lists of things you've got to do, taking into account the context of where you need to be to complete an action. So quite complicated, elaborate systems for personal productivity. Here's a guy using it for time journaling. Here's a guy who's customized TiddlyWiki inspired by cognitive theories of how your brain works. Here's another adaptation for getting things done, so different sort of basis for how you manage your to-do list items. Yet another one there. Here's a whole series of people who are using TiddlyWiki broadly like a blog, so to publish stuff to a wider audience. Great example here, a site for Japanese haiku poetry, which, kind of you click through and there's lots of little haikus and images associated with them. Scrolling down a bit more, there's again more standard bloggy stuff, and lots of those. And you'll see again, although many of them have that standard blue header, what really defines them is the differences, the way in which, so this guy, again, it's a kind of publishing site, but he's integrated a timeline because the data that he's dealing with has this kind of time axis. Anyway, and as you see, so we scroll through, loads of people using it in education, and lots of personal library organisation, that kind of thing. So what we're seeing here, I think, is one of the best qualities of open source, which is the ability of an open source project to sustain a very varied, heterogeneous ecosystem of users who are using the product for often radically different purposes, very different goals in mind, and all of them are combined by their need to make these tiny, minor customizations to the product. Because of the way that TiddlyWiki runs entirely on your own machine, it makes it particularly easy to modify, particularly safe to modify. You can't bring down somebody else's server by messing around with TiddlyWiki. So, as I say, now TiddlyWiki is reasonably mature. It's 5 years old, and it's been it's been a useful tool for just under 5 years, and has built an amazing community around it. And one of the most fabulous experiences you can have is to see something in TiddlyWiki that you think might be able to solve a problem that you're interested in, and then start engaging with the community to see what people have already tried, to see what other people can contribute. And what we see again and again in the TiddlyWiki community is this fabulous story of people helping each other at very low cost, in a way that would be hard to match if the tool itself wasn't open source. Okay.